Hi everyone, Hugh here. In this video, I'll be analyzing and summarizing the villainous Gladys from the 2025 movie Weapons. Gladys is a very mysterious figure in the movie, but boy did she make an impression. Amy Madigan did such a fabulous job that I haven't been able to stop thinking about Gladys even weeks after I saw the movie. So what better way than to excise her from my system than to do a deep dive into her character? So consider this your spoiler alert for the entire movie. Before I dig in, I want to thank all my returning viewers and subscribers. Your wonderful comments are always so encouraging and thoughtful. It really gives me a lot of motivation to keep making videos, so thank you for all your continued support. To my new viewers, please consider subscribing and liking the video if you enjoy it. It really does help the channel grow. Now on to the video. First, let's begin with a summary of the movie. In Maybrook, Pennsylvania, 17 third-grade students mysteriously vanished after running out of their homes at 2:17 a.m. Only one student, Alex Lilly, was left behind. Widespread panic and anxiety gripped the town following the mysterious disappearance of the children. Suspicion and blame immediately fell upon Justine, their teacher, who has since been placed on leave. Although the police have cleared Justine of any wrongdoing, the townspeople, particularly the parents of the missing children, remain convinced that she was involved with their disappearance. Arthur Graff, one of the parents, is so convinced of Justine's involvement that he begins to stalk her and vandalizes her car by painting the word witch on it. Although Arthur was mistaken in accusing Justine of being a witch, his suspicion was actually quite accurate. A witch was indeed involved in the disappearance, but it was not Justine. The true culprit behind the disappearance is actually an elderly woman who operates under the name Gladys Lilly. In my opinion, I don't think this is her real name, or at least her last name is most likely a lie, but let's put a pin in that for now. The film's narrative shifts between various characters and timelines. To better summarize and analyze her character, I plan to organize the films chronologically. While my primary focus is on Gladys, I must also discuss the other characters, as Gladys is central to most of the film's plotlines, and the other characters are drawn into her web of lies. Gladys's reign of terror in the town of Maybrook begins when she comes to stay with Alex Lilly's parents. Alex's parents aren't named in the movie, so I'll refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. Lilly. When Mr. Lilly picks Alex up from school, he reminds Alex that his mom's Aunt Gladys is coming to stay with them that night, explaining that Gladys is sick and has nowhere to go. Alex is apprehensive about Aunt Gladys coming to stay, as he has never met her and can't understand why she's coming to stay with them. Mr. Lilly agrees with his son, and even adds that Mrs. Lilly doesn't really know her either. But since she's family, Mr. and Mrs. Lilly feel like it's important to let Aunt Gladys stay. Alex gets his first glimpse of Aunt Gladys from his window that night. He only sees her back, but she appears to be a frail old woman who is hunched over. She's also wearing a reddish, almost orange wig. Aunt Gladys has to cling desperately to Mr. Lilly as he tries to help her with her bag and a strange-looking bonsai plant. Alex overhears his parents discussing Gladys in the morning. Gladys is Mrs. Lilly's mother's older sister. The family has been estranged from Gladys for 15 years, as she has never been close to them, and notably skipped Mr. and Mrs. Lilly's wedding. As her health declines, Gladys has asked Mrs. Lilly for permission to live out her final days with the Lilly family. Mr. Lilly is opposed to the idea, uneasy with the prospect of their home becoming a hospice for Gladys. However, Mrs. Lilly feels familial obligation to care for Gladys, as she is her mother's sister. She believes her mother would have cared for Gladys, and therefore she must do the same. Alex, curious about Aunt Gladys, takes a peek into her room as she sleeps. He sees Gladys's unique reddish-orange wig on the dresser, the strange bonsai tree near a window, and Gladys in bed. She is very thin and frail. Her great age is evident in her wrinkled skin, and she is mostly bald, with wisps of actual hair left on her scalp. As Alex gazes at her face, he realizes Gladys is not sleeping, but fully conscious. Her eyes are fixed and ominous, staring directly at him. He is startled and quickly shuts the door as he flees. In the car on the way to school, an anxious Alex asks Mr. Lilly how long Aunt Gladys plans to stay. Mr. Lilly doubts that Gladys will remain longer than a month, implying his expectation that she will die within that time frame. Later in the day, Alex waits patiently for his father for a school pickup, but no one arrives. After a long wait, Alex decides to walk home. Returning home, Alex is met with an unsettling and foreboding sight. His parents are seated opposite each other at the dining table. They appear only semi-conscious, their speech slow and slurred as though they are half asleep. Gladys enters the room from the kitchen, greeting Alex and welcoming him home. She is noticeably more lively and stronger than she was the previous night. She's also now wearing her wig. Despite her kind and friendly demeanor, a clear attempt to lull Alex into submission, the smart boy is too suspicious and doesn't trust her. He asks about his parents, and Gladys insists that they are, quote, just fine. An answer Alex knows is a lie. Gladys speaks in a cloyingly sweet and warm voice, addressing Alex with endearments like sweetheart and sweetie. However, her pleasant facade starts to crack when Alex pulls away from her when she attempts to touch him. Upset, she tells him not to be rude. Trying to regain her composure, she again urges him to get ready for dinner. Alex, sensing something is very wrong with his parents, quickly throws water from a nearby cup onto his father. When his father barely reacts, Alex begins to panic. Gladys's voice changes to a cold sternness as she commands Alex to go upstairs to bed without dinner. The next morning, Alex returns to the dining room to find that his parents have not moved since the day before. They have also grown more pale and sickly. Gladys is also waiting at the head of the table with a bowl of water in front of her. This time, any pretense is gone, and she commands him to come and sit at the table. This morning, she has elected not to wear her wig. Instead, she's in a blue turban wrap. She reassures Alex, emphasizing that his parents are merely resting and that there's no cause for him to be concerned. She then asks him to promise her that he'll not tell anyone else that she's at his house, or that his parents are currently, quote-unquote, resting. Alex refuses to respond. Gladys then pulls out a thorny branch, and she tells Alex to watch her closely. She pricks her finger on one of the thorns and begins to rub her blood all over the branch. Around the branch, there's what appears to be bundles of hair. As she rubs the blood into the hair and branch, she smiles and asks Alex in a sing-song voice, quote, "Are you watching?" Right after, Gladys snaps the branch in half. Mr. and Mrs. Lilly simultaneously begins repeatedly stabbing themselves in the face with the fork in front of them. Alex rushes to his father and tries to stop him from hurting himself, but Mr. Lilly only stops when Gladys drops the broken branch into the bowl of water in front of her. Gladys then commands Alex to sit back down. She then reiterates that he must not speak to anyone about her or what is going on at home, threatening him, saying, quote, "I can make your parents hurt themselves. I can make them hurt each other. I can make them eat each other if I want to. Do I want to, Alex? Do you believe me? Promise me you will not talk about me to another human being. Say it." For the sake of his parents, Alex promises Gladys, to which she tells him that she will know if he does. She then tells him to go take a bus to school. With Alex away at school, Gladys begins to transform the Lilly's house to suit her needs. She first covers the windows with newspaper, effectively blocking out both light and outside scrutiny. Furthermore, she moved into Mr. and Mrs. Lilly's bedroom, after removing all their furniture and relocating it to the guest room. Upon Alex's return, he discovers Gladys sitting on the floor of his parents' bedroom. She has lit several candles, and the room contains only a few scattered miscellaneous items. Gladys's large bag is open, and there seems to be glass bottles and tools on the floor nearby. Gladys is seated in front of her bonsai tree. As he enters the room, Gladys tells him that there will be no talking today, and that he needs to feed his parents some soup, and that tomorrow he will need to go get some more. The candles surrounding her imply a sacred or ceremonial nature to her actions, as she appears to be engaged in some kind of ritual with the tree. Alex's life settles into a gloomy pattern, dutifully feeding his parents soup, attending school, and then going to the grocery store to get more soup. One night, Alex is woken up by soft cries from Gladys. He discovers her frail and ill on the floor of his parents' bedroom, her head hovering over a pot, as if she had just been sick. She calls and reaches out to him, reverting back to her kindly voice. Gladys confides in Alex that she is extremely ill. When Alex offers her water, she refuses, stating it won't help her because she's been too sick for water for a very long time. Alex then asks what would make her feel better. Gladys replies that she had hoped Alex's parents would improve her condition, but this appears to be failing. Alex asks her if she would like to go to the hospital, to which she tells him that hospitals won't be able to fix her. Then she requests his assistance in gathering an item from each of his classmates at school. He then asks her that if she feels better, if she would be able to go home, to which she says, quote, "If I got better, I'd go back home." She then chuckles, smiles, and pats him gently. Behind Gladys's soft and kindly tone and Alex's carefully crafted compliance lay a tension as thick as a rising storm, the looming unspoken threat that hung over their interactions. Their current dynamic was a fragile truce, a high-stakes performance of courtesy. Gladys maintains her veneer of gentle authority because she absolutely required Alex to cooperate and carry out her bidding. In her weakened state, she would be unable to physically go on. However, her power over his parents is still absolute. For his part, Alex played the role of the dutifully, if somewhat hesitant servant, not out of genuine respect, but from a desperate singular focus of saving his parents. His every compliant action was a calculated step towards one goal, securing Gladys's departure, and by extension the freedom of his parents and himself. Both parties understood the game, each negotiating with the unspoken consequences of failure hanging heavy in the air between them. Reluctantly, Alex steals the name tags of all his classmates from their cubbies and delivers it to Gladys. That night, Alex was roused from sleep at 2:15 a.m. by noises coming from the kitchen. When he goes downstairs to investigate, he discovers Gladys casting another spell. This ritual involved a bowl of water set on the kitchen island, surrounded by lit candles. Gladys was dropping torn-up name tags into the dark water. The water appeared to contain a mix of submerged dried herbs. A confused Alex asks what she is doing. Gladys only looks at him before continuing with her spell. She makes an upturned gesture with both hands, seeming to mime the action of rolling something between her fingers before spitting into the bowl once, and throwing a lit match into the bowl. When the match hits the water, it ignites into large sparks for a split moment. She then rings a small gold bell. The clock nearby shows the time is 2:17. Gladys then steps outside to the front door and looks expectantly at the street ahead. All the other 17 children from Alex's class begin to run at speed towards the house. Their arms held rigid and angled at their sides with their palms splayed open evoke the strange, almost mechanized posture of a bird preparing for an impossible flight. This unsettling physical stance, combined with the alarming and relentless speed of their motion, rendered the image of children running into something truly terrifying and deeply eerie. It wasn't the spontaneous, joyful, or clumsy run of normal play. Instead, it felt like a disturbing and uncanny parody of childhood activity. Their movements were stiff, precise, and entirely devoid of the loose-limbed playfulness one expects from children, but as puppets pulled by invisible strings, executing a motion that was both familiar in its form, yet horrifyingly alien in its execution. The children sprinted into the house one after another. Alex can only watch in horror, realizing the terrible nature of what he had helped Gladys achieve. Gladys, however, remained serene, her palms pressed together as if in grotesque imitation of a devoted nun or teacher welcoming students indoors after a break. The children are confined to the dark basement, where they remain standing absolutely motionless, mirroring the resting behavior of Alex's parents. After the disappearance of the 17 children, police and even the FBI were called to investigate. Gladys, knowing this will happen, prepares for their scrutiny. Gladys tended to Mr. Lilly's appearance, specifically applying makeup to conceal the wounds on his face. Subsequently, Gladys presented Mr. Lilly and Alex to the police. She falsely claimed that she was living with and caring for the family because Mr. Lilly had recently suffered a stroke. Alex, worried about his parents' well-being, chooses to lie in order to safeguard Gladys's secrets. Anticipating the upcoming home visit, Gladys performs a second spell. She pricks her finger with a branch once more, but this time she gathers string from the children's clothing to tie to the bloody branch. To create an illusion of normalcy from the expected visitors, she makes Alex thoroughly clean the house. As night falls, she again uses her powers, forcing the children to flee and hide elsewhere. The next day, detectives arrive at the Lilly house to find a clean and orderly home with no signs of anything suspicious. Due to the seemingly ordinary circumstances, the Lillys are subsequently cleared as suspects. Once cleared, the children then are moved back into the Lilly's basement, where Alex continues to feed the children and his parents soup. The children's absence spans a considerable duration. A radio segment initially mentions that they've been missing for at least 30 days, and later in the film, Marcus confirms that 2 months have passed since their disappearance. I've tried to put the movie's events in chronological order, despite the frequent shifts in timeline and perspective. Please understand that this is my reading of the film, not the official timeline. Many simultaneous events complicate things and do add to the chaos, so I might omit some details or make mistakes. I'm prioritizing events that revolve around or were caused by Gladys, so many other elements may be excluded. Also, visual cues such as the newspapers accumulating on the Lilly's driveway and the increasingly overgrown lawn helped me to establish the passage of time and subsequent events. But not all scenes have such visual cues, so I kinda have to guess and place them in the timeline as best I can. While the Lillys are cleared by law enforcement of any involvement with the disappearance of the children, not everyone is convinced. Justine, the children's classroom teacher, is growing increasingly suspicious of the Lillys. Meanwhile, Arthur Graff's desperate need for answers intensifies, causing him to start stalking Justine because of her connection to the children. These two opposing characters, one suspicious of the Lillys and the other suspicious of Justine, will soon find themselves entangled in Gladys's web. As they investigate, both characters are plagued by nightmares of Gladys. Justine's dream begins at Maybrook Elementary. The school hallways are dark and empty as she walks towards her classroom. Inside, the children are unnaturally still and silent, their heads resting on their desk in dim light. Suddenly, Alex slowly raises his head, fixing Justine with a wide-eyed, unblinking stare and an unsettling smile. The garish makeup on his face mirroring Gladys's, symbolizing her control over him. Justine awoke with a jolt. As she started to calm down, she heard a faint sound of movement, but saw nothing unusual in the darkness. She lay back on her pillow and looked up at the ceiling, where she was met with a terrifying vision, Gladys staring back at her. Gladys's eyes were wide and unblinking, and her hands reached out as if she was emerging from the ceiling. Justine let out a loud panicked scream and thrashed in her bed. When she looked up at her ceiling again, Gladys was gone. Archer's nightmare places him in his son's room, where he observes his sleeping self still lying in his son's bed. The clock on the nightstand reads 2:17. Suddenly, the door mysteriously swings open, and the sound of running footsteps echoes through the house. Archer follows the sound, which leads him to the front door, which also opens on its own. Rushing outside, he sees his son running with the peculiar stiff-arm gait. Archer calls out and chases after him through a line of trees, only to find himself led right back to his own house. As he's about to enter the house after his son, a strange and startling image appears. A colossal assault rifle hovering directly above the house. A storm is brewing in the night sky, and the number 217 is visible on the weapon before it vanishes into the storm clouds overhead. Archer followed his son Matthew into the house, proceeding immediately into Matthew's room. He found Matthew lying in bed and turned his son over to face him. Matthew's face was utterly blank, devoid of any recognition or emotion. Archer's initial emotion is anger, demanding an explanation from his son. But anger soon turned to grief as he breaks down into despair as he looks upon his son's blank face. Archer attempts to apologize and proclaim his love and devotion to his son. But suddenly his son's face transforms into the terrifying, eerie, smiling visage of Gladys, whose eyes and grin are unsettlingly wide. This jolts Archer out of his nightmare. Meanwhile, Justine is still determined to uncover the secrets of the Lilly family. Justine attempted to conduct surveillance from her parked car. However, her stakeout was unsuccessful as she became intoxicated and passed out in the vehicle. Sometime later, the front door of the Lilly house creaked open, and a horrifying, disheveled Mrs. Lilly appeared. Gripping a large pair of scissors, her movements were unnaturally stiff, like a puppet on strings, as she moved strangely towards Justine. Mrs. Lilly reached Justine and paused for a terrifying moment, simply watching Justine sleep, before climbing into the backseat of the car. There, she cut a lock of Justine's hair before retreating back into the house, leaving the unconscious Justine blissfully unaware of the bizarre occurrence. Mrs. Lilly was, of course, being controlled by Gladys, who now has a lock of Justine's hair. As more time passed, Justine became increasingly certain that there was something amiss with Alex and his family. She contacted Marcus, the school principal, and informed him of her intention to call Child Protective Services to launch an investigation. However, Marcus, hoping to avoid further trauma for Alex, suggested a gentler approach. He would call for a meeting with the family first to try to resolve the issue. Marcus calls the Lillys for an in-person meeting at his office, and Gladys attends. Gladys made her entrance in her usual eccentric manner. Vibrant vintage clothes, a prominent wig, a large bag, and exaggerated clown-like makeup. All who encounter her are visibly shocked by her look. Marcus, for example, manages to keep his composure despite his surprise. In contrast, his secretary is left silently stunned upon first sight of Gladys. She's too shocked to leave on her own, forcing Marcus to dismiss her. Marcus, who knew the Lillys, was confused by Gladys's unexpected presence, as he had anticipated meeting with Alex's parents. Gladys clarified that she is Mrs. Lilly's older maternal aunt. She's currently in town taking care of Alex's parents as they have fallen ill with a, quote, touch of consumption. This further perplexes Marcus, as consumption is an old-timey term for pulmonary tuberculosis. He doesn't reveal Justine's identity, but he insists he must speak with Alex's legal guardian about the welfare concerns and complaints that Justine raised. Gladys's gaze landed slyly on Marcus's reading achievement ribbons, lying on a nearby table, and her mind immediately started to formulate a plan for handling both Marcus and Justine. Marcus continues to insist that he has to speak to the parents in person as he's trying to avoid CPS. He offers to come to the Lilly house at some point so he can speak directly to Alex's parents. Gladys asks Marcus who made the complaint, but Marcus tells her that he's not at liberty to say. However, Gladys already suspects Justine. Gladys tells him that this is all very distressing, but does not object. Now, it isn't clear when, but around this time, James, a homeless drug addict, stumbles upon the Lilly house after he was punched by Officer Paul Morgan. Seeing the dark house, quiet and neglected, James decides to rob the house, thinking that it would make for an easy target. He climbs up to the second floor and makes entry through a window. This happens to be the window into the guest room, which is now full of other furniture that Gladys moved out of Mr. and Mrs. Lilly's bedroom. James then makes his way through the house, stealing miscellaneous items. However, he's unable to enter Mr. and Mrs. Lilly's bedroom as it's locked from the inside, likely by Gladys, who has taken over the space and is most likely resting inside. As James moves through the messy house, he comes across the Lillys, but they are in their quote-unquote resting catatonic state. Startled and fearful, he tries to apologize before realizing their condition. Hearing sounds from upstairs, probably Gladys, he continues to move through the house stealing valuables. His curiosity leads him to the basement, where he discovers the missing children, all standing still in the darkness. They suddenly turn to him in unison, which causes him to panic and flee the basement. Stumbling out of the basement, James makes a lot of noise, which most likely alerts Gladys upstairs, as Mr. and Mrs. Lilly suddenly begin to move towards him. James manages to escape just before they can catch him. Sometime later at the pawn shop, James saw a $50,000 reward poster for information regarding the missing children. Desperate for the cash, he called the police, intending to claim the reward with his knowledge of the children's whereabouts. However, the police instructed him to come to the police station to provide the information in person. However, before James can make it into the police station, Paul spots him and begins to chase after him. This is due to an earlier incident where Paul struck James in the face in a fit of rage, leading to a desperate deal. Paul agreed to let James go only if James promised never to mention the assault, and issuing an ominous threat that he never wants to see James again. However, upon seeing James heading towards the police station, Paul's fear of being reported for his misconduct instantly flared into blind fury, prompting him to pursue James. To shake Paul, James runs into the woods, heading back towards his tent. However, James feels a strange presence in the trees before he gets to his campsite. He scans the woods and sees an eerie sight: Gladys, who appeared to be waving at him. Frightened, James flees, taking refuge in his tent. As a shape nears the tent and starts to open the zipper, a terrified James lashes out, striking the approaching figures with used syringes. The mysterious figure turns out to be Paul, who is now extremely enraged at James for stabbing him in the face with his used syringes. A very angry Paul shoves his shotgun directly into James' face. Terrified, James attempts to apologize and confesses that he knows the location of the missing children. Following James' directions, Paul drove to the Lilly residence. Paul left James secured in the police cruiser's back seat before approaching the front door. He began to have a conversation with the person inside, presumably Gladys, and then entered the residence. Sometime later, night has fallen, and Paul has been inside the house for hours. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and a bewitched Paul emerges, clearly under Gladys's control. His eyes are wide, and his demeanor is extremely aggressive. He stalks towards James, grabs him, and forcibly pulls him towards the dark house. Paul is like a wild beast, snarling and growling as James struggles and screams for help, all to no avail. Once inside, James too will succumb to Gladys's bewitchment. Sometime later, Gladys arrived unannounced at Marcus's home on a Saturday. Marcus and his husband were just sitting down to enjoy a meal of hot dogs and chips while watching a nature documentary. The program featured a segment about a parasitic fungus that seizes control of ants. A sudden ring at the door interrupted their quiet meal. Marcus answered it to find Gladys, who was dramatically distressed. She claimed to have missed the bus because she had been waiting at the incorrect corner. She exclaims that she's on the verge of collapse. Humorously, when Marcus's husband sees Gladys, he too is shocked by her appearance. Gladys then asks for some water, to which Marcus was about to decline as he sensed that there's something wrong with this whole scenario. Unfortunately, his husband Terry decides to let Gladys inside, seeing her as a frail, eccentric old woman. Once inside, Gladys enthusiastically declared her love for their beautiful house. Heading to the kitchen, she puts her large bag on the counter and says she needed to speak to Marcus about their previous meeting. A highly dramatic cough followed. This prompted Marcus to offer her a glass of water, but Gladys stopped him, requesting a bowl of water instead, explaining it was simply a strange idiosyncrasy of hers. After getting the bowl of water, Gladys tells Marcus that she spoke with Mr. Lilly and he is agreeable to meeting with Marcus on Monday, making a call to CPS unnecessary. Marcus accepts this, but Gladys then presses him on whether he has already contacted CPS. Marcus refuses to answer and begins to insist for her to leave. But before he can even finish his sentence, Gladys pulls out another branch. She begins to roll a piece of the reading achievement ribbon that she stole from Marcus's office onto the branch. He even notices and asks if that's his ribbon. She then asks Marcus again if he has contacted CPS. This time her tone is more ominous and threatening. When Marcus confirms that he hasn't, she slices her palm with the thorny branch. Alarmed, Marcus tells Terry to go get their first aid kit, but Gladys stops them, asking instead for a simple rag. She begins to coat the branch in her blood, and then smoothly grabs a pair of shears. When Terry gets close to Gladys to hand her a dish towel, she snips off his hair. Marcus, having enough of Gladys, begins to call the police, but before he can, she pulls out her gold bell and rings it. Compelled by Gladys's bewitchment, Marcus freezes, struggling but unable to move. Gladys then takes a lock of hair she had cut from Terry and binds it to the branch. She then snaps the branch, which launches Marcus into a frenzy, and he assaults his own husband, choking him to the ground before vomiting a black torrent of tar-like goo onto him. Marcus then repeatedly headbutted Terry until Terry's skull was crushed. Meanwhile, Gladys remained unperturbed, casually cleaning her cut in the sink. With Terry dead, Gladys calmly placed the branch into the bowl of water, immediately stopping Marcus's attack. Marcus rose, still under the same compulsion that had affected Mr. and Mrs. Lilly. Gladys then removed Terry's hair from the branch and tied on Justine's lock of hair. Snapping the branch again sent Marcus running out of the house towards Justine. Gladys then nonchalantly tidied up, placing all her supplies back into her large bag, then calmly makes her way out of the house and drives off in Mr. Lilly's car. Under Gladys's influence, Marcus charges forward at a frightening speed, his arms rigidly fixed at his sides, just like the children. His eyes are wide and fixed, and as he gains distance, they begin to bulge unnaturally. His bloody, terrifying appearance alarms the townspeople as he sprints through the streets. He finally reaches the gas station, interrupting a confrontation between Justine and Archer. Marcus immediately attacks Justine, attempting to choke her, just as he did Terry. Fortunately for Justine, Archer intervenes, fending off Marcus and allowing her a chance to escape. However, Marcus is relentless and almost unstoppable, compelled by Gladys' spell to continue his murderous pursuit, running and fighting with unnatural frenzied speed and strength. Justine manages to drive off in her car, but Marcus continues his chase on foot. Archer gives chase to Marcus, but the pursuit is abruptly cut short when a collision occurs. Another driver hits Marcus, killing him instantly. The crash is fatal, but a particularly grisly detail is noted. Marcus's head appears to have popped or exploded from the force of the impact. Gladys returned to the Lilly's house to prepare for their immediate departure. While the elimination of Marcus and Terry may have provided a brief reprieve, the close encounters with Paul and James, along with Justine's survival and increasing suspicion, meant her clandestine operation is close to being uncovered. Upon Alex's return from school, she instructed him to pack up his belongings, informing him that they would be leaving the following day. She then issued a stark warning. He was not to cross the line of salt she had drawn across the threshold of Mr. and Mrs. Lilly's bedroom door. With that, Gladys retreated into their room, leaving Mr. and Mrs. Lilly standing guard with a menacing presence. In witchcraft, a salt line is a protective barrier. Typically a circle or line across a doorway is used to ward off negative energies, evil spirits, or unwanted interference during rituals or for general protection. Drawing on salt's ancient associations with purity and cleansing, it creates a boundary, keeping unwanted influences out or containing energies within a sacred space. Gladys appears to have created a protective barrier that is safeguarding the room, and consequently, her unusual magical bonsai. Following the incident with Marcus, Archer and Justine join forces to compare observations. Archer points out that Marcus's running style was identical to that of the missing children, which he had seen in the surveillance videos. Archer tells Justine, quote, "He was weaponized, like a heat-seeking missile locked onto you." This description perfectly captures Marcus's state, as Gladys had compelled him to eliminate Justine without fail. An individual under Gladys' spell is forced to carry out her command and cannot be stopped until she either breaks the spell, by placing the bloodied branch into the water, or her objective is achieved, or by the compelled individual being killed. Archer showed Justine a map that pinpointed the likely area of the missing children. He had determined this location by plotting the routes taken by his son Matthew and by another missing girl, Bailey. To Justine's astonishment, the suspected area turned out to be Alex Lilly's house. The pair go to the Lilly house and park across the street. Before they can decide what to do, the front door ominously swings open. Paul steps outside and begins to beckon to them to come inside. His movement is unnatural and strange. Justine and Archer are hesitant, but not knowing what else to do, they follow after him into the dark house. While searching the cluttered house, lines of salt are visible on the floor, laid meticulously to line the entrances of various rooms and the staircase. These precise lines are Gladys's carefully set trap, waiting to be sprung. Hesitant, Justine paused and lingered near the front door. Then she noticed Paul in the corner and moved toward him as he beckoned her closer. The instant she stepped across the salt line, the protective spell was triggered. James and Paul, who had been bewitched, immediately lunged at Justine and Archer, attacking them with rabid screeches and growls. Upstairs, Alex put his plan into motion. He intentionally stepped over the protective salt line of his parents' bedroom, which immediately provoked Mr. and Mrs. Lilly into attacking him. Leading them toward his own room, he quickly slipped through the connecting closet into the guest room. From there, he rushed into his parents' bedroom and locked himself inside. With his parents aggressively attacking the door, Alex stopped to plan his next move. He scanned the room and the adjoining bathroom, finding them empty. Gladys was nowhere in sight. However, he did notice the bonsai tree, and specifically a few of the spell branches Gladys had used. Grabbing one, he quickly snatched Gladys's wig and ran into the bathroom, locking the door just in time as his parents broke through the bedroom door. Back downstairs, Justine manages to shoot Paul with his own gun before shooting James to save Archer. In the basement, Archer finds the missing children standing in the dark. As he looks for his son, Gladys rushes at him from the dark and manages to snatch a necklace from him. With his necklace, she manages to bewitch Archer, and she sends him to get rid of Justine. Meanwhile, Alex, thinking quickly, prepares a spell of his own. After being forced to watch Gladys perform the bewitching spell on his parents, he knows exactly what to do. He stabs his finger with the thorny branch, and begins to rub his blood all over the branch. Then taking a hair out of Gladys's wig, he binds her hair to the branch. Emerging from the shadows, Gladys watches with apparent enjoyment as Archer, under her compulsion, attacks Justine. She seems to revel in the sight of Justine's demise. But Gladys's enjoyment is interrupted when Alex snaps the branch, triggering a spell of his own. Sensing the spell, Gladys is frozen in fear, only able to let out a quiet, quote, "Oh no." The rumble of children's footsteps echoed throughout the house as all 17 children, driven by Alex's command to eliminate Gladys, emerged snarling and growling from the basement. Fleeing the house in a panic, Gladys takes off, her arms flailing comically as she runs. She cries out in terror while rushing through the quiet neighborhood. The children's relentless pursuit of her culminates in the film's most satisfying, exciting, and comical scenes. After trying to escape through a house, Gladys is finally caught by one of the children. She's tackled onto the ground and is unable to get up in time before the other 17 children catch up to her. All the children descend upon her like a pack of wild animals. They viciously begin to beat, bite, and tear into Gladys. She can only cry out in terror as the children literally rip her apart. The demise of Gladys breaks the spell that she had casted. Consequently, Archer ceases his assault on Justine and is reconciled with his son Matthew. Meanwhile, Alex successfully rescues his parents and embraces them tightly. While the people she bewitched are free, the effects of the enchantment lingers. While Archer seems to return back to normal right away, the children and Mr. and Mrs. Lilly are still stuck in a catatonic and suspended state. At the film's conclusion, the narrator notes that some of the children appear to be slowly recovering, with a few gradually regaining their ability to speak. Meanwhile, Alex is sent to live with his aunt, presumably a real aunt this time, and his parents are placed in a care facility. Now that I've finished the summary, let's look at some different topics and other fun details and Easter eggs that I've noticed throughout the film. So I've come up with 2 theories surrounding Gladys' origin, though it must be stressed that both are purely speculative. This is due to the fact that Gladys' character remains profoundly enigmatic throughout the entire movie. The first theory is that she is the real Aunt Gladys, though now deeply changed and perhaps twisted by dark forces. This posits that Aunt Gladys did not simply disappear, but rather turned to the practice of witchcraft, seeking immortality and immense power, an act that has sustained her physical existence far beyond her natural years. This sustained existence, however, came at a cost, morphing her into the figure we see in the movie. The second theory is, however, my favorite, as it's far more interesting. This theory posits that the mysterious Aunt Gladys is actually a centuries-old witch, who has expertly and subtly manipulated the entire Lilly family into taking her under false pretenses. I really don't think she is genetically or legally related to the Lillys at all. I think that Gladys, the witch, has taken the place of the real Aunt Gladys for some time now, and has in all likelihood disposed of the genuine Gladys. A brief interaction between Mr. and Mrs. Lilly casually revealed the critical fact that the couple had not seen Aunt Gladys in a staggering 15 years. Furthermore, the real or fake Aunt Gladys was notably absent for the majority of family milestones, including the Lillys' own wedding and Alex's birth. Given the family's lack of contact, this identity theft would have been shockingly easy. While appearing as a sickly elderly lady, there are slight hints that Gladys may be even older than what she appears. In the meeting at the school with Marcus, Gladys mentions that the Lillys have come down with a touch of consumption. The term consumption is a rather old term for tuberculosis that was especially prominent from the 1700s through the 1900s. While the disease itself, known as tuberculosis, is still a global concern, the use of the term consumption has largely faded from common medical and societal vocabulary. This use of anachronistic language suggests a depth of history and a memory spanning centuries, casting doubt on her seemingly conventional elderly age, lending credence to the idea that she's an entity of supernatural longevity. There's also an interesting line where Gladys tries to coax Alex into compliance. She tells him, quote, "Let me take a look at you. Oh, I haven't seen you since you were a little teeny baby." This is interesting because it is most likely a lie. As Mr. and Mrs. Lilly was discussing earlier, they have not seen Aunt Gladys in over 15 years. Alex is in elementary school, meaning that the timing does not add up. For Gladys to actually have met Alex before, he would have to be into his mid to late teens. I think what makes the most sense is that Gladys is not even really related to the Lillys at all. She's most likely an imposter, taking advantage of Mrs. Lilly's generosity, and she has attached herself to the family like a parasite, figuratively and literally. Gladys later introduces herself to several people as Alex's aunt, Gladys Lilly, or Miss Lilly. Given her stated relationship as Mrs. Lilly's aunt, not Mr. Lilly's relative, the adoption of the Lilly surname is inherently suspicious. A maternal relative would logically retain her own distinct family name, or perhaps the surname of her spouse, not the surname of the family she is supposedly related to through her niece's marriage. The deliberate choice to use the surname Lilly is not an accidental one. It's a calculated and manipulative tactic. By presenting herself as Miss Lilly, Gladys strategically attempts to align herself directly with the family unit, specifically with Alex Lilly, to whom she seeks to gain unfeathered access. This contrived familial connection provides her with an immediate, albeit false layer of credibility. Gladys displays many powerful and unsettling abilities throughout the film, chief among them her signature summoning and binding spell. This particular incantation is a ritual that necessitates primary components to be effective: a personal item belonging to the intended target, and the use of her small distinctive gold bell. The bell itself appears to be a conduit or catalyst for the magic, allowing Gladys to extend her influence over a distance. The primary function of the summoning and binding spell is to gain absolute control over a person. Once the spell is successfully executed, the victim is not merely incapacitated, they are held in a strange, weird stasis. This state is more than simply paralysis. It traps a person's consciousness and physical body, rendering them immobile and silent, effectively removing them from reality while keeping them preserved for Gladys to use as puppets. Gladys's victims require nourishment, as shown by Alex being instructed to feed them soup, but they appear to cease producing waste and are instead kept in a strange state of preservation. Their blood flow is also abnormal. When the Lillys injure their own faces, the bleeding is minimal, almost as if Gladys is draining them of their life force. Gladys's most horrifying ability is her attack spell, a dark form of puppetry that turns her victims into weapons. For this spell to work, she must have first bound the person already with her gold bell. He then needs a personal item that belongs to the intended target, who she wants to harm. This personal item acts as a tether and a bullseye, linking the puppet to the intended target. She fastens the personal item to the thorny branch from her unusual bonsai. Then she makes an incision or pricks herself with the branch, covering it in her own blood. Gladys can then employ various triggers. Snapping a branch is one method, but she can also utilize automated protective measures like with the salt lines. When a salt line is crossed, her puppets launch a relentless attack, even in Gladys's absence. Gladys issues a diverse array of commands. Her non-violent instructions include directing Mrs. Lilly to cut and retrieve a lock of Justine's hair and forcing Paul to wave at Justine and Archer. This contrast highlights that not all her directives are violent. However, when she does choose to incite violence, it manifests as an extreme and relentless force. Her bewitched victims are marked by an uncontrollable frenzy, operating outside the natural order with supernatural strength and incredible stamina. They exhibit a complete disregard for pain, and their eyes become unnaturally distended. They become weapons, and once activated, relentlessly pursue their targets until one of the following occurs. The target is eliminated, the weapons themselves are destroyed, the controlling thorny branch is submerged in water, or when the spellcaster is killed. Gladys also possesses another unsettling ability that extends beyond the physical realm, the power of psychic projection, which manifests as dream infiltration. This is not merely a shared hallucination, but it appears to be a malevolent intrusion into other people's minds. Both Justine and Archer are tormented by the sight of Gladys appearing within their nightmares. However, for Justine, the psychological assault is so intense that the line between the sleeping and waking world is blurred. She perceives Gladys even after waking, suggesting the psychic impression lingers and bleeds into her conscious reality. Furthermore, James experiences a different but equally eerie display of this projection in the woods waving at him. This scene suggests that Gladys can project her image or essence not just into dreams, but also into the waking world. The nature of her psychic ability remains ambiguous. It is uncertain whether she consciously controls this power as a tool for maintaining her secrecy and influence, or if it is merely a chaotic, malevolent manifestation of her corrupting nature. There is an argument to be made for the latter, as Gladys's goal is to remain undetected. Yet these dream infiltration causes suspicion around her presence to be known. Visions of her may not be a deliberate attack, but acts more as a contagious spiritual sickness, a psychic fallout. So there are two possibilities. These psychic visions of Gladys can be a deliberate infiltration, or it can be an involuntary side effect of her powers. A small but interesting detail is that there are certain scenes where we can see Gladys's pupils are sometimes not the same size. Sometimes her enlarged right pupil is visible. This condition is known as anisocoria. The condition could be caused by natural benign reasons, or it could be a serious symptom caused by nerve damage resulting from stroke, tumors, infection, or injury. Famous example is David Bowie, whose signature look was due to anisocoria, not heterochromia, which is different colored eyes. This resulted from a punch by his friend George Underwood during a teenage fight. The blow paralyzed the muscle in Bowie's left iris, leaving the pupil permanently dilated. This permanent dilation made the pupil appear darker, creating the illusion of a different eye color. In Eastern European pagan tradition, the presence of mismatched eyes, or witch eyes, was interpreted as a sign of supernatural power. This trait was believed to grant individuals abilities, like seeing into other dimensions, or signal a connection to the other world, often suggesting ties to magic or lineage of witches. Gladys is a formidable witch whose mismatched eyes are indicative of two things: her potent concealed magic, and a physical affliction. This suggests that while she may lack physical strength, her magical power is immense. Now I want to examine Gladys's bonsai tree for a bit. For the strange tree appears to be an unusual hybrid, possibly a cross between a holly and a blackthorn. Its serrated leaves resemble those of a holly tree, while the long spiky branches suggested traits of a blackthorn. The holly holds deep, powerful symbolism across Celtic, Roman, and Christian traditions, signifying concepts like protection, eternal life, resilience, and the cyclical nature of the seasons. Its evergreen quality and bright berries provide a beacon of life and hope through the darkest winter, with the berries representing light and fertility. However, the image of a charred and blackened holly inverts this hopeful meaning. The plant's traditional symbolism is corrupted. This transformation suggests decay, destruction, and a violent extinguishing of life. Yet despite the visible evidence of decay and the violation of natural processes, the plant clings to life. This persistence is not a sign of hardiness, but rather an unnatural and defiance of botanical logic. The vibrant life-giving green of chlorophyll, essential for photosynthesis, the very mechanism by which a plant draws substance from light, has been utterly blackened. This suggests a profound disruption. The plant has been stripped of its natural means of survival. Consequently, its continued existence implies a dependency on other external mechanisms, perhaps artificial or malevolent, providing it with the energy required to live on, even without the most fundamental components of its biological function. This ongoing life in the face of profound corruption is what makes the plant disturbing. It is a life maintained by an unseen, unconventional force. Furthermore, the holly plant is deeply rooted in Christian tradition. Traditionally, its thorny leaves and red berries are seen as representing Christ's crown of thorns and the blood he shed. The blackening of the holly serves as a stark visual metaphor, suggesting a corruption, a negation, or outright rejection of fundamental tenets of Christianity, transforming what is a symbol of sacrifice and life into one of defilement. The blackthorn also holds symbolic meaning, representing a cycle of protection, transformation, death, and rebirth. Its association with the crone aspect and Celtic traditions link it strongly to themes of faith and resilience. The tree's sharp thorns signify defense, contrasting with its white flowers that bloom on dark wood, illustrating the emergence of light from darkness and symbolizing the balance between life and death. The strange blackthorn hybrid lack of typical white blossoms is also a significant metaphor. This absence suggests the tree is consumed by darkness, utterly devoid of light. Its sterile nature hints at a fundamental perversion of purpose. The tree appears to exist solely as an instrument of malevolence, a conduit for darkness that denies life and growth. Gladys's peculiar relationship with the bonsai tree serves as a potent visual metaphor for her own existence. A life sustained not by natural means, but by a strange, almost vampiric vitality. The act of Gladys communing with the tree, meditating by it, suggests a deep symbiotic connection. The tree's placement in a darkened room, intentionally kept away from windows, is an interesting detail, as it strongly implies that the plant does not need light to survive. Furthermore, the tree's status as a bonsai reinforces the idea of artificial state of life. A bonsai, by its nature, is a plant whose growth is deliberately stunted and controlled by human intervention. In this case, the control seems to extend beyond merely pruning. We never witness Gladys watering the tree, creating the impression that it is not sustained by typical means, but rather by some esoteric unseen energy. It is a perfect emblem of a life held in stasis, defying the ordinary rules of nature. This sustained, unnatural state of the tree mirrors Gladys's own condition. When she first arrived at the Lilly house, Gladys was an image of extreme frailty. Alex's initial observations confirmed this. She could barely manage to walk, relying heavily on Mr. Lilly's support, and appeared incredibly delicate and weak when in her bed. She was a fading being, nearing the end of her natural reserve. The turning point, both for Gladys and the Lilly household, is directly tied to her bewitchment of Mr. and Mrs. Lilly. Once she has successfully bewitched the couple, a remarkable and disturbing transformation takes place in Gladys herself. The energy she has siphoned from the Lillys acts as a powerful restorative. Post-bewitchment, Gladys is dramatically revitalized. However, this energy does not sustain her for long, as she once again becomes ill and frail days later. This is why she needs Alex to bring her the other children. For all her powers, Gladys has turned into a parasitic entity. Her continued existence demands an ongoing supply of new victims. The goat bell is another noteworthy magical instrument. This peculiar artifact is marked with the number 6 and a downward-pointing triangle. In an occult context, the inverted triangle is an alchemical and elemental symbol for water. This symbol is strongly associated with flow, emotion, intuition, the feminine, and the womb, concepts that align perfectly with Gladys's practice of using water as both a medium and a catalyst for her spellcasting. Furthermore, the triangle often conveys the number 3. a numerical association that commonly represents concepts like the maiden, mother, crone, or past, present, future. Given its powerful occult significance and its strong connection to women, this symbol is an especially fitting choice for a witch. The triangle, with its 3 association points and the number 6, may also suggest 6 3 times, or 666. The sequence of 3 sixes holds intense, widely recognized negative and malevolent associations, primarily rooted in Christian eschatology, famously referred to as the number of the beast in the Book of Revelation. This biblical figure is interpreted as a mark or symbol of the Antichrist, the ultimate prophesied adversary of God and Jesus Christ during the end times. This profound religious context ensures that 666 is frequently seen as a sinister omen, a harbinger of evil, and a direct connection to Satan or the devil, maintaining its powerful cultural association with immorality, impending doom, or alignment with dark satanic forces. Nice small details in the movie that alludes to the devil is Maybrook's elementary school logo and mascot, which is a blue billy goat. The goat is associated with the devil through biblical symbolism of sin, the scapegoat banished into the wilderness, contrasting with the sheep, the faithful, in the Last Judgment, and by Christian artists merging the goat-like pagan god Pan and the goat of Mendes with Satan, solidifying the image of a horned, cloven-hoofed figure representing evil, lust, and rebellion. There's also another imagery of the goat which appears behind Archer's ram truck. Gladys's very unique and striking appearance is another feature that makes her stand out, often serving as the first thing people notice about her. Her look is hard to define, simultaneously drawing attention in a way that humanizes her, yet also making her incredibly unsettling. Interestingly, this outward presentation is intrinsically linked to her dual nature, as she effectively operates with 2 distinct personas. Her public persona is the clownish Aunt Gladys, but her true self is cold and calculating, a witch. The first and most frequently displayed, eccentric old Aunt Gladys persona is a meticulously crafted facade, defined by the theatrical sense of exaggerated style. This includes her large grandma bag, flamboyant accessories, a distinct brightly colored orangey baby bangs wig, and a demeanor that conveys a delightful yet harmless dottiness. This Aunt Gladys persona grants her an unusual degree of freedom and latitude. Her sharp intellect and hidden motives are often overlooked because people often mistake her pronouncements or eccentric behavior for the harmless quirks of an elderly woman. This underestimation provides her with a powerful position from which to observe and manipulate. Her visual chaotic appearance therefore acts as a form of camouflage, distracting from the astute mind beneath. Furthermore, she adopts an almost cartoonish or sitcom zaniness in her speech and mannerisms, making her seem comical and non-threatening. Paradoxically, while her appearance commands incredible attention, it simultaneously renders her non-threatening, allowing her to recede into the background. However, beneath this flamboyant costume lies her true self. This is not merely a change of clothes, but a profound psychological and physical transformation, a shedding of the elaborate facade she uses to navigate the world. This authentic self is a closely guarded secret, revealed only in moments when she feels absolutely and utterly in command, needing no artifice to assert her dominance. This shift is quite startling and dramatic. The theatrical makeup is gone, revealing a set of features that is cold and sharp. Her eyes, normally obscured by her large sunglasses and makeup, become piercing and focused. Concurrently, her entire physical being undergoes radical realignment. Her posture shifts from comical, chaotic, self-depreciating energy to one of formidable elegance and absolute precise control. In this true form, her true self is revealed as cold, menacing, and full of malice. The only person she allows to witness her true unmasked self for a prolonged duration is Alex Lilly. This singular vulnerability is not born of affection or trust, but of pure calculated control. With Alex's parents bewitched, Gladys possesses absolute certainty that he is utterly incapable of exposing her secret. He is in effect her captive audience and involuntary confidant. Gladys's makeup brings immediately to mind other horror movie clowns. Pennywise, the shape-shifting entity from Stephen King's It, Captain Spaulding, the foul-mouthed depraved patriarch from Rob Zombie films, and Art the Clown, the silent, sadistic killer from the Terrifier series. There is an even more direct nod to arguably the most famous evil clown in all of media, the Joker. You see, this is clearly seen in the dream sequence where Archer is having a nightmare. Things take a sudden turn when Gladys pops out of nowhere, replacing Archer's son, Matthew. The immediate shock comes from Gladys's creepy clown-like face and wide smile. The specific smile is a dead ringer for the Joker. The connection gets even stronger with little details that feels like an Easter egg in Matthew's bedroom. You can clearly see Matthew's bed dressed with the full Batman-themed sheet set. The well-known Batman logo is right there on the bedding. The inspiration drawn from the Joker for Gladys extends beyond the superficial resemblance in costume or makeup. Beyond the visual nods, both Gladys and the Joker operate under a remarkably similar modus operandi, a psychological foundation that drives their actions and interactions. Both characters use an exaggerated clownish or cartoonish facade as their main tool for manipulation and chaos. This overt, playful, almost theatrical presentation serves as a disturbing mask, brilliantly concealing a core personality that is both deeply depraved and chillingly cold. Another inspiration that seems to have inspired Gladys's creation is an older female villain, Minnie Castevet from Rosemary's Baby. Gladys's memorable style is an intensified version of Minnie's. Unconventional clothes, bright colors, clashing patterns, and excessive jewelry, which establishes a subtle, menacing, but maternal presence. A pivotal scene is directly adapted from Rosemary's Baby. Minnie's uninvited intrusive visit to Rosemary Woodhouse's apartment served as direct inspiration for Gladys's arrival at Marcus's and Terry's home. Like Minnie, Gladys immediately offers commentary on every minute detail of the couple's home. This highlights her intrusive nature, entitlement, and need for domination, echoing the tension created by Minnie's unwelcome appearance. Furthermore, both characters share a highly performative behavioral pattern. They use exaggerated dramatic flair in their conduct and dialogue, with amplified gestures and distinct voices. Their forceful social approach masks an underlying threat, emphasizing manipulative schemes veiled by superficial pleasantness. All this hides their true nature as malevolent beings who are tied to dark magic and satanic rituals. Gladys's choice of brooches is a small final detail I particularly appreciated about her look. Predominantly large and floral, their designs appear to reinforce the link between her and the mysterious bonsai tree. Gladys's evolving vitality is mirrored by her flower brooches, which depict blossoms from bud to full bloom. The budding stage corresponds to a period of seclusion at the Lilly house, during which she isn't in her full outrageous wardrobe. In contrast, when the brooches are in full bloom, Gladys is more animated and more vibrant, and she's usually wearing all her accessories and is typically active outside the house. The brooches, along with her name, hint at a deeper connection to plants. The tree serves as a major source of her power, with its branches being extremely potent, and Gladys appears to commune with it. Her alias, Gladys Lilly, further supports this interpretation. Gladys is a Welsh name meaning ruler or princess, and Lily directly references the lily flower, often a symbol of purity and beauty. Thus, Gladys Lilly can be interpreted as ruler of lilies or ruler of flowers. However, despite the tree's potency, Gladys is unable to sustain herself and constantly requires new victims to survive. This leads to a disturbing theory. The relationship between Gladys and the bonsai tree may be parasitic. The tree may not only be the source of her power, but could also be feeding on her, extracting her own life essence in return for her magical abilities. This horrific cycle would force Gladys to continually drain the life force of others to replenish what the bonsai takes from her. Her power therefore comes at the cost of being a necessary conduit in the tree's vampiric sustenance cycle. This makes her both the master of a powerful plant and a perpetual victim of its demands, explaining her unending need for fresh victims. Earlier, I mentioned the number 217 and how that number may be significant in the story, but I wanted to examine it more here. Gladys rings her bell at 2:17 a.m., which explains why the children disappeared exactly at the same time. The number is noteworthy because it may relate to the classroom. 2 represents Justine and Alex, the 2 individuals who remained, and 17 is the count of children Gladys bewitched. Adding more symbolism to the number, as I mentioned earlier, the film appears to be heavily invested in the underlying themes of gun violence, specifically focusing on children and schools. This interpretation is supported by several visual and narrative elements. The massive rifle displaying 217 positioned over Archer's residence in his nightmare, a visual memorial depicted at the school, and the mention of a classroom of lost children following a single event day. The number 217 on the immense rifle likely holds significant meaning and serves as a form of political commentary. The most probable interpretation is that it references the 217 yes votes cast for the assault weapons ban in the US House in July 2022. Even though the bill passed with 217 in favor and 213 against, this legislation outcome effectively stalled, therefore underscoring the political impasse surrounding the issue. Furthermore, the number connects to actual shooting incidents. The Parkland shooting caused 17 deaths. Additionally, the tragic aftermath of the incident led to the deaths of 2 survivors due to declining mental health. 217 is also a famous number in horror, as it is a reference to The Shining. In one of Stephen King's most famous novels, The Shining, the young psychic Danny Torrance has a terrifying encounter with a supernatural entity in the infamous room 217 of the isolated Overlook Hotel. This room number is particularly significant because it's the exact room where King himself stayed at the real-life Stanley Hotel in Colorado. His experience there, which included a vivid dream of his son being chased through the hotel corridors, was the primary inspiration that sparked the creation of the entire novel. However, when Stanley Kubrick directed his classic 1980 film adaptation of The Shining, a notable change was made. The haunted room number was switched from 217 to 237. This alteration was not a creative choice, but a practical decision made at the request of the Timberline Lodge in Oregon, which was used for the exterior shots of the Overlook Hotel in the film. The lodge was concerned that if Kubrick used the real room 217, future guests would be so frightened by the story that they would refuse to book that room, leading to financial loss. Ironically, room 217 at the Stanley Hotel, the very room that inspired King's novel, is now one of the most requested accommodations by guests eager to experience the hotel's legendary paranormal activity. Lastly, 217 could also be another allusion to the death of Trevor Moore. Zach Cregger was profoundly impacted by the tragic and premature loss of his close friend. Moore died after an accidental fall at his Los Angeles home around the same time. Gladys's parasitic nature is inspired by various real-world parasites. Her life-draining ability, for instance, mirrors that of a tapeworm. Lacking a mouth, a tapeworm attaches its hooked head to the intestinal wall and absorbs digested nutrients, fats, vitamins, and minerals directly through its skin. Similarly, Gladys drains the life and soul out of her victims. The longer they are under her control, the more she takes. While Archer quickly recovered mere seconds after being freed from Gladys's control, the other individuals weaponized for much longer suffered catatonia for months or even years, followed by very slow recoveries. This suggests that Gladys consumed something vital from these victims, which necessitated an extensive period for recovery. Gladys's mind control ability bears a striking resemblance to the parasitic mechanisms employed by the genus Cordyceps. This group of fungi is renowned in nature for its grisly yet fascinating method of infection and manipulation, particularly targeting insect hosts such as ants, caterpillars, and various arthropod larvae. This biological process is a highly specific form of zombification. Once a cordyceps spore successfully infects an insect, often an ant, the fungal mycelium begins to proliferate within the host's body. Crucially, the fungus does not initially attack the vital organs. Instead, it targets the central nervous system. It synthesizes psychoactive alkaloids and other biochemicals that infiltrate and hijack the insect's brain, effectively taking control of its motor functions and decision-making apparatus. The fungus then forces the insect host to leave its normal colony, or habitat, and ascend to a position ideal for the fungus's reproductive cycle, typically a high vantage point like the underside of a leaf or a stem. This is not a random act. The fungus manipulates the insect's mandibles to clamp down onto the vegetation in a death grip. Once the position is secured, the fungus rapidly consumes the remaining host tissue, and then, with horrifying speed, grows a fruiting body, a stalk-like structure known as a stroma, out of the insect's head or other parts of its body. This structure is specifically designed for the final critical phase, the widespread dispersal of new infectious spores onto the unsuspecting insect population below, restarting the parasitic cycle. Gladys's ability mirrors this chilling natural phenomenon, a high-precision, involuntary manipulation of a target's mind and body to position them for a specific, often strategic outcome, dictated solely by her will. Gladys's action within the Lilly household offer another example of parasitic behavior, strikingly analogous to the behavior observed in certain parasitic ant species. Much like how these opportunistic insects invade a host colony to exploit its resources, Gladys infiltrates the Lilly home and systematically begins the process of complete domestic takeover. This usurpation centers on undermining and ultimately displacing Mrs. Lilly, the established matriarch and manager of the household. Gladys is not merely a guest. She is an invasive force whose goal is to control the environment, resources, and social structure of the Lilly family, effectively making herself the new dominant figure in the domestic sphere, while the original host, Mrs. Lilly, is rendered increasingly powerless and obsolete. Gladys's arrival transformed the once inviting home into a chilling, gloomy place. Sunlight gave way to dim cold light, filtering through the newspaper-covered windows. The vibrant colors of the interior receded, leaving only somber grays and deep shadows. The interior became a chaotic, unsettling lair. It was no longer a home, but a dark, cold witch's den. The movie skillfully wove a tapestry of parasitic themes, complemented by a myriad of subtle foreshadowing and contextual clues designed to reward careful viewers. One of the most compelling examples appears in the movie's opening sequence, centering on the character of Alex. Alex is notably positioned in front of a poster titled The Wonderful World of Wales. This visual detail is far from incidental. It introduces a crucial duality that mirrors the central narrative arc. The poster distinctively features two suborders of whales, the mysticetes and the odontocetes. Mysticetes, or baleen whales, use keratinous baleen plates instead of teeth to filter feed. They employ gulp or skim feeding to sieve plankton and krill from large volumes of water. This group includes the largest animals on Earth, like the blue whale. In contrast, odontocetes are the toothed whales. They use their teeth to capture and process individual prey, making them active hunters. Odontocetes also utilize echolocation for navigation and hunting. This diverse group ranges from dolphins and vaquitas to the massive sperm whale and the orca. This juxtaposition of whale types serve as a profound allegory for the children's psychological and moral transformation within the film. Initially, the children are portrayed as mysticeti, innocent, passive, and perhaps metaphorically feeding on the environment and care provided to them. However, under the pervasive and manipulative influence of Gladys, they are systematically transformed into the odontocetes, from passive feeders to toothed hunters. This evolution is key to understanding Gladys's control as she molds the children into her dangerous weapons. Also notice that those who are turned into Gladys's weapons seem to be able to locate their intended prey with supernatural precision, mirroring how some odontocetes can echolocate their prey. Furthermore, the very presence of the whales hints at the overarching theme of parasitism. Whales in nature are frequently host to barnacles, organisms that attach themselves to a host for mobility and subsistence, often without giving anything back in return. This natural biological relationship subtly foreshadows the mechanisms of Gladys's survival. The theme of parasites pop up again in Justine's nightmare sequence. A board visible behind her prominently displays the header "Parasite," followed by its definition and list of examples: roundworm, tapeworm, leech, barnacle, lice, and ticks. Furthermore, the topic of whale reappears on the second board on the right. A nice further detail is that the clock seen in the nightmare is also set at 2:17 a.m., the time of the children's disappearance. I mentioned it briefly, but it bears repeating. When Marcus and his husband sit down to eat hot dogs, they're watching a documentary about the parasitic fungus that infects ants. Of course, this is an allusion to Gladys and her parasitic powers, but the inclusion of cordyceps adds a layer of additional horror. Instead of directly invading the insect's brain, research indicates that the fungus develops an intricate network throughout the body, effectively controlling the muscles like a puppeteer manipulates a marionette. This is alluded in the scene where Mrs. Lilly exits the house with a strange gait. Her stiff limbs and shuffling movement suggest she is being manipulated by Gladys like a puppet on strings. The truly unsettling question that remains is the level of awareness experienced by Gladys's victims during their bewitchment. Are they merely puppets, their minds blank and unfeeling as their bodies commit unnatural acts? Or far more terrifying, are they fully cognizant spectators trapped within their own flesh, forced to witness the terrifying spectacle of their own possession? There's also another reference to a parasite in a classroom scene where Justine asks the class to name an example of a parasite. One of the students, Lisa, answers by saying tapeworm. The film immediately establishes its prevalent themes of addiction and alcoholism through a powerful visual cue right at the start. The prominent placement of the Alcoholics Anonymous symbol, a circle and a triangle, inside the letter O on the weapon's title card powerfully signals that alcoholism and addiction will be major central themes of the film. In interviews, Cregger has stated that the film is deeply inspired by his own personal experiences, specifically with his own alcohol addiction and his childhood experience of growing up with an alcoholic father. The seemingly ordinary hot dog meal shared by Marcus and Terry is in fact a deeply personal and significant tribute from Cregger, which honors his late friend comedian Trevor Moore. This is in reference to the Hot Dog Timmy sketch from The Whitest Kids You Know. If you want to see the sketch for yourself, I'll put a link in the description. Cregger has stated that the film became deeply personal to him, serving as a vehicle to process his own grief and loss following the unexpected passing of his friend in 2021. This is evident in the opening line, quote, "This is a true story." Its themes are drawn from real-life emotional experiences, the death of Trevor Moore, and the upbringing of his alcoholic parents to his own struggle with alcohol addiction. The use of the Mickey Mouse couple's t-shirt was jarring, due to the Walt Disney Company's famously aggressive protection of their intellectual property. Given Disney's fierce reputation for guarding their mascot, the dark, surprising use of Mickey Mouse in a horror film raised questions about how it was legally permissible. The filmmakers were able to do this because the Mickey Mouse version featured in the film was the original Steamboat Willie incarnation of Mickey Mouse, which entered the US public domain on January 21, 2024. The use of Mickey Mouse for Marcus perfectly symbolizes his character as the privileged American and the embodiment of the status quo. The final chase sequence in the film exhibits a distinct echo of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, specifically the iconic scene where Ferris races through the suburban landscape in a desperate dash to reach his home before his family and principal. In a compelling contrast, the sequence involving Gladys takes this familiar suburban chase trope and injects it with a darkly humorous twist. Gladys, the antagonist, is now the one frantically running across the very neighborhood she had previously terrorized. Despite the underlying grit and violence that characterizes Gladys's actions and the high stakes of her flight, the scene maintains a surprisingly humorous tone. This comedic element is achieved through the almost slapstick portrayal of Gladys's desperate escape, particularly the visual of her arms flailing wildly as she's pursued by a mob of enraged children, which culminates in a very cathartic, albeit violent, end. The narrative structure of the movie is designed to be told from multiple interwoven perspectives. This creative choice was directly inspired by Paul Thomas Anderson's critically acclaimed film Magnolia. Much like its cinematic inspiration, Weapons functions as an ensemble piece, masterfully connecting seemingly disparate storylines. Officer Paul Morgan's character, including his mustache, was a clear and direct tribute to Officer Jim Curing from the movie Magnolia. The film, far from being a simple supernatural thriller, presents underlying themes that demand the audience to look beyond its surface-level scares. Although the plot appears to be a thrilling narrative about a malevolent witch, Gladys, who arrives to terrorize a small town, it actually explores deeper social and psychological territory intrinsic to American culture. This raises essential questions. What overt and subtle allegories are at play in the movie? And exactly what does Gladys represent in the context of modern American anxieties? The initial structure of the narrative at a glance adheres to the familiar trope of an external menace disrupting the equilibrium of a normal community. This convention, often seen in psychological thrillers and horror movies, sets the audience up to expect a simple conflict between the established order and the disruptive outsider. However, the true, deeply unsettling core of the horror emerges not from the actions of the outsider alone, but from the horrifying decay of the suburban ideal itself. The story functions as a dark commentary, peeling back the veneer of manicured lawns and neighborhood watch programs to expose the festering, lingering dangers that the community has attempted to bury or ignore. These dangers include the cycles of violence that often perpetuate silently behind closed doors, the insidious grip of addiction that isolates individuals despite their proximity to neighbors, and perhaps most damningly of all, the pervasive cultural complacency that allows rot to set in unnoticed. The character of Gladys is not merely a catalyst for destruction, she's an opportunistic mirror. She's a predator whose keen understanding of human weakness allows her to target the most defenseless members of society, specifically children. Her method is insidious, cloaking her malice with an utterly disarming facade of eccentric niceties and saccharine sweetness that keeps the community from recognizing the wolf among them until it's far too late. This disguise makes her a far more dangerous threat than an overt villain, as she turns the very mechanisms of community, trust, neighborhood politeness, and the presumption of innocence into her most effective weapons. Gladys's character is a rich tapestry woven from threads of both ancient and modern witch folklore, as well as historical anxieties that fueled real-world witch panics. She's intentionally crafted to embody the primal archetypal danger that exists just beyond the perceived safety of civilization's boundary. Her design draws a clear parallel to figures like the cannibalistic witch found in Grimm's fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. This foundational inspiration establishes Gladys as a menacing predatory figure who targets the innocent for her own sinister purposes. Interestingly, Gladys seems also profoundly inspired by another folktale of the Piper of Hamelin. While the Piper isn't generally regarded as a witch or a figure of supernatural evil in the traditional sense, his story is one of calculated malice and irresistible influence. He was initially known for his seemingly benign, albeit mystical, power to charm and hypnotize rats, leading them away from the town with his enchanting music from his pipe. However, this very power became a weapon. When the townsfolk refused to pay him what he was promised, the Piper retaliated by turning his hypnotic musical talent upon their most precious assets, their children. He played a captivating tune that led all the children of Hamelin with the music from his pipe never to return. This act of collective abduction through irresistible charm is strongly echoed in Gladys's methods. Much like the Piper, Gladys achieves her dark goals by leading the town's children away, not with the sound from a pipe, but the haunting, enchanting jingle of her small golden bell. Furthermore, a significant part of Gladys's thematic foundation stems from the very real-world fears and widespread hysteria that characterized the witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries. This historical period, marked by paranoia, misogyny, and religious fervor, saw thousands of individuals persecuted and executed based on spectral evidence and social anxiety. Gladys is a manifestation of those deep-seated cultural anxieties: fear of the feminine outside of patriarchal control, fear of natural forces defying human order, and fear of the devil's influence within the community. For a deeper dive into the historical context, cultural analysis, and folklore surrounding the subject of witches, you might be interested in my dedicated video on the movie The Witch. If the themes of devil worship and witches intrigue you, that video is an excellent follow-up watch. Ultimately, Gladys can be interpreted as the personification of the hidden rot within the United States. Her very existence challenges the carefully constructed facade of order and domestic bliss that the suburban community strives to maintain. Most of the characters that encounter Gladys are immediately gripped by a primal, inarticulate fear of her. Her appearance is so striking and dissonant that it seems to bypass rational thought, triggering an immediate flight or fight response. Yet the rigid confines of societal niceties, civility, and politeness act as a powerful constraint on the other characters. This tension between visceral revulsion and the social imperative to be kind, or at least civil, is a key element of the suburban horror she represents. They must offer her a cup of tea, or listen patiently, even as every instinct screams for them to retreat. Conversely, as I noted before, her eccentricities and surface-level appearance might make her seem harmless, and there is an element of truth to that. Her strange kooky behavior, and crucially her status as an old white woman, a figure traditionally associated with harmlessness, community, and maternal care within this social context, causes many to initially overlook her deeper strangeness. This social coding acts as a protective shield. However, the internal reaction of those who meet her for the first time is one of immediate fright or deep-seated discomfort. They are immediately on edge. Her harmless facade is a cognitive dissonance that the other characters struggle with. They want to believe the safe surface reading, but cannot ignore the deeper, unsettling truth their instincts are screaming. Gladys's influence spreads because people choose politeness over prudence, allowing her to breach their defenses. While Gladys is the primary antagonist and narrative center, the film's thematic richness comes from a diverse supporting ensemble. This varied cast moves the story beyond a simple villain-hero dynamic, offering a multifaceted exploration of human nature and societal issues. Each character embodies a specific idea, moral dilemma, or societal critique, collectively contributing to a nuanced social commentary. Their struggles are crucial threads in the film's message. To fully grasp Gladys's pivotal role, her influence, and antagonism, we must first understand these characters. Their themes and fates are anchored by Gladys. She acts as the catalyst, obstacle, and mirror for their internal conflicts. The narrative is deeply immersed in the pervasive theme of addiction, which casts a long and destructive shadow over the principal characters. This shadow manifests mainly through the abuse of alcohol, illicit drugs, and food, creating a tapestry of self-destruction and codependency. Paul's struggle with alcohol dependency is central to his theme. His addiction is not merely a personal flaw, but a debilitating force that defines his actions and relationships. His most recent relapse represents a painful and significant regression in his journey towards sobriety, a setback that is tragically, inexplicably linked to his relationship with Justine. Justine, too, is profoundly reliant on alcohol, using it as a primary coping mechanism to navigate her own deep-seated inner turmoil, anxieties, and traumas. Their shared struggle forms a destructive codependent dynamic. In this relationship, one lapse serves as a potent trigger for the downfall of the other, creating a vicious cycle where true recovery becomes a constant uphill battle fought on unstable ground. The emotional and psychological toll of this mutual reliance severely undermines any genuine attempt by either party to achieve lasting sobriety. Adding to the critical layer of complexity and symbolism is Paul's profession as a police officer. As a figure of authority sworn to uphold the law, his addiction and subsequent actions highlight a profound hypocrisy. This symbolism is amplified when Paul abuses his power by brutally assaulting James and then attempts to subsequently cover it up. This act not only reflects his personal moral decay fueled by his addiction, but also suggests a systemic corruption within the very institutions meant to maintain order. Furthermore, the character of Gladys embodies a deeper societal ailment or chaos, and the narrative makes a powerful statement about the ineffectiveness of established power structures in addressing these profound issues. Both the local police and the FBI are shown to be completely misled by Gladys. This demonstrates that the power of the law, and by extension the government, is presented as completely inept at dealing with the complex, entrenched societal woes which Gladys embodies. Ultimately, Paul falls under the control of Gladys and becomes just another tool at Gladys's disposal. The destructive, all-consuming grip of addiction is perhaps most powerfully and tragically embodied by the character of James, whose life has been entirely subsumed by a severe and unrelenting heroin dependency. His very existence is reduced to a stark, relentless cycle, the desperate singular pursuit of his next fix. This physiological and psychological need dictates every facet of his life, illustrating the profound, all-encompassing, and ultimately enslaving nature of opioid addiction. James's world has shrunk catastrophically, narrowed solely to the desperate, immediate demands of his dependency, leaving virtually no mental or emotional space for anything else. While fundamentally selfish and ultimately a slave to his addiction, James is not painted as a straightforwardly malicious villain. In fact, his portrayal is often filtered through a dark, almost pathetic comedic lens, making his tragic situation even more poignant. He is above all a pitiable character, a lost soul utterly in the grips of an external powerful force. His actions following his escape from the confines of the Lilly house serve as the most damning evidence of his dependency's control. In his desperate, single-minded flight, the thought of rescuing the captive children never once crossed his mind. The idea to call the police only occurred to him later, a purely transactional motive sparked by seeing a reward poster tacked up at the pawn shop. He is too deeply and irrevocably lost in his own immediate vices and needs to genuinely care for the plight of others. James exists in the cold, hard periphery of society, a visible yet simultaneously invisible man. His interactions with others, or lack thereof, underscores a wider societal pathology. A particularly telling moment is in his encounter with Justine, where she pointedly ignores him. He holds the door open to the liquor store for her and asks for money, offering a thin, transparent, phony sob story about needing a bus ticket to see his brother. This moment of deliberate avoidance, the act of pretending of not seeing a person in need, is one that many in modern society has experienced or enacted. However, within the narrative, it is deeply indicative of a profound societal issue, the widespread inclination to ignore, compartmentalize, or actively pretend that people like James, the homeless, the addicted, the marginalized, do not exist as full, complex human beings. James survives literally and figuratively on the fringes, living right among the townspeople, yet effectively hidden away in his isolated private tent deep in the surrounding woods, a forgotten symptom of a sick society. Marcus serves as a key character examining the themes of modern consumerism, overconsumption, and the inertial desire to maintain the societal status quo. His character is consistently linked to the acquisition and consumption of food, establishing his deep embedment in consumer culture. Smaller recurring details like his casual eating of candy at the office build up to a more significant scene of the couple indulging in large amounts of junk food at home. The theme of consumerism extends beyond food, visible in the couples matching Mickey and Minnie Mouse t-shirts. These Disney characters function as a powerful, universally recognized symbol of American corporate consumerism and mass-marketed normalcy, making their attire an ironic commentary on Marcus's identity. Further highlighting this theme, Gladys notes the beauty of their home, specifically their kitchen and diverse belongings. Professionally, Marcus is the school's principal, operating under a strict adherence to the rules and professionalism. However, his primary function in the narrative is as a representative of the status quo, prioritizing societal normalization and the avoidance of uncomfortable truths. This is most evident in the school meeting he organizes, which is designed to help parents towards closure and encourage them to move on after the traumatic disappearance of their children. Marcus also acts as an institutional barrier to genuine investigation. He repeatedly obstructs Justine's inquiry and insists she leave Alex Lilly alone, even though Justine's assessment that there's something fundamentally wrong with Alex proves correct. In this context, his rule-following becomes an act of willful ignorance, designed to shield the existing social order from disruption. Marcus is deliberately portrayed as an utterly normal, average person. His actions are not malicious, inherently wrong, or conventionally inappropriate. He represents the majority who simply seek to live their lives and find quick emotional relief or closure when faced with trauma. Yet by prioritizing this normalcy and quick resolution, he fundamentally aids in upholding the status quo. His desire to move on essentially means ignoring the deeper, more unsettling root cause plaguing the community. The consequences of Marcus's overconsumption are defined by one uniquely symbolic and gruesome detail. When he falls under the control of Gladys, he's the only one to violently vomit a torrent of thick, black goo directly onto his partner. This horrifying, repulsive manifestation of corruption is a literal purging. His accumulated overconsumption of food, emotional avoidance, and societal normalcy is physically ejected. Ultimately, Marcus functions as a symbol of broader American society and its pervasive culture of overconsumption. He's likable and relatable, not malicious, mean, or hateful. Despite this, he falls prey to Gladys and is turned into a literal weapon. Archer Graff's character arc is profoundly defined by a destructive whirlpool of grief, regret, and consuming rage. The disappearance of his son has not merely saddened Archer, it has shattered the foundations of his life. He is utterly paralyzed, unable to process or move past his grief, manifesting in the ritual of sleeping every night in his son's empty bed, a physical embodiment of his inability to let his son go. The immense pressure of his loss has fractured his marriage. There's a very quick glimpse of his wife, who appears distant and emotionally cold, suggesting a profound and irreparable gulf has opened between them. Archer's professional life has also suffered under the weight of his depression. His focus is entirely compromised. He struggles with memory and finds it impossible to concentrate on anything other than the gnawing, unsolved mystery of his missing son. This singular obsession transforms into a frantic, all-consuming quest for answers. However, as his frustration mounts, his sorrow curdles into toxic hatred, which he misdirects at Justine. Though she is entirely innocent of any crime, she has become the town's scapegoat, ostracized and maliciously labeled as a witch. Archer's anger is so potent that it translates into concrete acts of aggression, including the vandalism of her car. This pattern of behavior powerfully illustrates how intense, unprocessed grief can metastasize, turning a sympathetic victim into a destructive force, a weapon aimed at the world he can no longer control or understand. While the raw emotions and underlying motivations of a father searching for his son are undeniably understandable and sympathetic, the consequence is that Archer himself crosses a moral boundary. He becomes an aggressor, unjustly targeting a vulnerable, innocent teacher who had absolutely no involvement in the children's disappearance. Archer's nightmare is a profoundly potent sequence steeped in symbolism, and serves as a critical key to unlocking the film's more elusive thematic undercurrents. While the general contours of the dream have been summarized, a deeper dive reveals its powerful commentary on generational trauma, gun violence, and moral corruption. Archer chasing his son Matthew out of their house, only to be led back into an identical copy of the house, is highly significant. Matthew, as the quintessential representative of the youthful generation, is shown running away from home. Yet the inescapable reality is his return to an identical, cyclical environment. This mirrored house, however, is not the same. It is grotesquely altered by the presence of the strange, gigantic assault rifle suspended menacingly above. This image functions as a chilling metaphor. It suggests the inescapable exposure of children to the culture of violence and weaponry, particularly within the very space that is supposed to represent safety and sanctuary, the home itself. The oversized, almost cartoonish scale of the weapon amplifies the psychological burden and omnipresence of gun violence into domestic consciousness. It is demonstrably not a coincidence that Archer's son Matthew is established in the film as a school bully, a character who actively targets and terrorizes vulnerable peers like Alex Lilly purely for amusement. Matthew embodies the transmission of aggressive, destructive behavior across generations, a moral sickness passed down or absorbed from his environment. He is the product of the very societal and perhaps parental failings that Archer represents. The nightmare culminates in Archer's desperate, belated confrontation with his son. When Archer finally locates Matthew in bed, the emotional core of the scene is Archer's confession of deep regret, his profession of love and care that he failed to articulate and demonstrate when it mattered. This is the moment of his profound parental failure. However, this moment of reckoning arrives tragically late. Matthew's physical transformation into Gladys, complete with her unsettling massive smile and vacant eerie gaze, seals the nightmare's message. Matthew has been utterly corrupted by the influence of Gladys, who is not merely a character, but a personification of societal decay. Archer's inability to reach his son before this corruption signifies a wider societal failure to protect the young from malign, destructive influence, leaving the next generation hollowed out, wearing the mask of the very corruption they were meant to be shielded from. Justine Gandy, a dedicated and caring teacher, becomes the immediate and principal scapegoat following the inexplicable disappearance of her students. Her predicament serves as a potent commentary on societal mechanisms of blame, the psychological fallout of collective trauma, and the tendency to weaponize grief. She can be seen as embodying the archetype of the witch hunt figure, an outsider or convenient target onto whom a terrified community projects its deepest fears, anxieties, and sense of powerlessness. While it's acknowledged that Justine's personal life is disorganized, her professional commitment and profound care of her students are undeniable. Yet the moment the children vanish, the community almost instinctively lays the blame squarely at her feet. She's thrust into a modern-day witch hunt, marked by a pervasive and immediate lack of support or defense from her colleagues, the school board, or the parents she had served. A crucial element of her character arc is her intuitive awareness regarding one of her students, Alex Lilly. Knowing her students well, Justine is the only one to notice that there's something profoundly wrong with Alex. When she attempts to raise these vital concerns to the appropriate authorities, her warnings are swiftly dismissed under the pretext that she is too personally involved with her students. This dismissal highlights a deeply ironic and hypocritical societal paradox. Justine is initially lauded and commended for being a caring, emotionally invested teacher. But this very quality, her deep connection to her students, is simultaneously weaponized as the justification for her alleged negligence and ultimately their disappearance. The fact remains that all the children disappeared while under the direct supervision and care of their own parents, not while in Justine's classroom. Despite this undeniable truth, Justine Gandy remains the focus of public fury. Her character thus crystallizes society's enduring troubling tendency to project blame onto innocent caregivers, particularly female figures in nurturing roles, for larger systemic societal woes or inexplicable tragedies. Support, empathy, and investigation are withheld, while blame and condemnation are readily, even eagerly thrown at individuals like Justine, who are already invested in the well-being of the victims. She becomes a sacrificial figure, bearing the moral and emotional cost of a community unable or unwilling to face the true, unsettling nature of its trauma. Her nightmare, much like Archer's, serve as a potent symbol for children impacted by exposure to gun violence, the drug epidemic, alcohol abuse, and domestic abuse. The striking image of the darkened classroom, with children's heads resting on the tables as if asleep or dead, powerfully conveys their vulnerability. This scene suggests that malicious forces are so pervasive that children are not even secure within an elementary school, leading to them being lost, harmed, or killed. Alex Lilly is introduced as a deeply poignant symbol of the innocent children tragically exposed to the devastating, far-reaching, and corrosive effects of domestic abuse, psychological violence, and deep-seated emotional trauma. His previously happy, stable, and secure home life is utterly corrupted and profoundly overshadowed by the chilling arrival and malicious calculated actions of Gladys. Her terrifying control over his parents destroy the family unit. Alex, a mere child, is forcibly thrust into the untenable role of caretaker. His compliance is cruelly coerced. Forced to aid her wicked schemes under the agonizing threat of severe harm to his parents, his assistance causes a destructive ripple effect. Alex inadvertently becomes the vehicle through which Gladys's toxic influence spreads beyond the confines of his own home and seeps into the entire town. His story is one of child's innocence destroyed, a testament to the fact that victims of abuse are often forced into roles that make them unwitting accessories to the very evil that victimizes them. Though Gladys was the main culprit in destroying Alex's life, his parents contributed through their naive trust and ignorance. Their poor judgment in inviting the destructive Gladys into their home left them unable to protect their son. Mrs. Lilly's preoccupation with doing what she thought was right ultimately led to her family's ruin. The betrayal of trust continued as Alex was subsequently failed by the institutional system designed to safeguard children. Even when investigators were formally dispatched to his house, they demonstrated a lack of necessary perceptiveness. Whether through rushed inspections, negligence, or an inability to recognize the subtle signs of abuse and distress, they failed to notice anything amiss. The school system's response was an inadequate and short-sighted attempt at remediation, compounding a systematic failure. Instead of investigating the source of Alex's distress or addressing the trauma he has clearly endured, they merely moved him into a new class. This attempt to force a new normal and move on, though possibly well-intentioned, ultimately proved useless in protecting Alex. Amidst the landscape of adult and institutional incompetence, it is his teacher Justine, a compassionate and observant figure, who becomes the lone beacon of hope. She's the only one to notice the significant troubling changes in Alex, the withdrawn demeanor, the veiled fear, the silent plea for help. Yet Alex, driven by desperation and fear, is forced to push her away. He goes to painstaking lengths to maintain Gladys's horrific secret, believing that by doing so, he is fulfilling the goal of protecting his family. Alex tragically embodies the countless children globally trapped in brutal and unsustainable domestic situations. These children are forced to maintain a facade of normalcy, bearing the immense weight of family secrets, and pretending that their home environment is fundamentally okay and stable. This predicament fosters deep isolation and hopelessness. They are utterly trapped, seeing no viable path to escape or rescue from their continuous ordeal. Alex is forced into premature maturity. The dynamic with his parents, who are taken over by a parasitic force, is a powerful metaphor for the effects of parental alcoholism. This highlights a complete inversion of traditional family roles. Alex assumes the adult role, while his parents are left dull, diminished, and incapacitated. The narrative surrounding the children and symbolism they embody is central to exploring the profound and devastating effects of gun violence, addiction, and trauma within American society. Their presence serves as a lens through which the story examines the loss of innocence, as Gladys transforms them from vibrant children to husks that she can use for her own gains. The children are pivotal in demonstrating the enduring pattern of generational trauma. Their ongoing struggles clearly illustrate how past wounds actively influence their current reality and future prospects, perpetuating a cycle. Even by the film's conclusion, the children have not fully recovered, the narration hinting that while there is some progress, it remains a slow and arduous process. The narrative centering on the removal and subsequent harm of children from an American classroom by Gladys carries a profound and deeply unsettling symbolism, representing the notion of a lost generation. As these children are seized and damaged by Gladys's actions, they are altered, their innocence and potential forever marred. The visual of the rifle, an instrument of mass destruction, hovering above a home, a place traditionally symbolizing safety, refuge, and family, is a pointed commentary on the pervasive nature of gun violence. It directly implicates the domestic environment as the source of many such tragedies, symbolizing how the weapons used in these devastating school attacks are overwhelmingly kept in private residences. Furthermore, the sheer exaggerated scale of the rifle emphasizes the monumental and overwhelming presence of gun culture in America, suggesting a national crisis that looms large over every individual and community, fundamentally altering the feeling of security within our own homes. The nightmare format itself underscores the psychological toll of this constant threat, portraying it as not just a policy issue, but as a deep-seated collective anxiety. So putting this all together, what does this mean for the overarching narrative? What do all these seemingly disparate characters have in common? Well, narratively, they are all intimately connected, their lives woven together and ultimately corrupted by the corrosive and destructive influence of Gladys. Gladys is far more than just an antagonist. She is a quintessential parasite, a supernatural force driven by relentless need for survival. This parasitic nature is not merely a metaphor for her personality or actions. It is a literal descriptor of her powers and her essence. Her abilities function by draining the vitality and resources from those she encounters, leaving her victims diminished and hollowed out. Additionally, she's the potent living embodiment of a deep-seated societal corruption. This corruption is not a hidden, shadowy conspiracy, but a conspicuous, ever-present force, openly seen and yet simultaneously and willfully ignored by the community at large. Like how Gladys's garish, clownish appearance paradoxically serves as both an attention-grabbing spectacle and a camouflage, ensuring she's often overlooked and profoundly underestimated. Numerous systematic issues plaguing contemporary American society operate in a similar, bewildering fashion. These are not secret ailments, they're problems that are universally known, meticulously documented by countless studies, reports, and journalistic investigations, and widely acknowledged across the political spectrum as detrimental. Yet despite this comprehensive awareness and widespread consensus of their existence, the response from governing bodies and collective society remain marked by conspicuous and disheartening absence of meaningful, decisive, and sustained action. The problem, like Gladys, are loud, visible, and demanding of immediate attention, but the political will to enact fundamental change is deafeningly silent, leaving these societal maladies to fester in plain sight, much like the crisis that everyone sees, but no one truly addresses. This paralysis is evident when one considers the widespread issues of drug addiction, which ravages communities and families with escalating death tolls, the relentless pressure of overconsumption and materialism, which strains both personal finances and the environment, the pervasive and often silent suffering caused by chronic alcoholism and domestic abuse, and the recurrent devastating tragedy of gun violence. Each of these is a known quantity, a clear and present danger, that has been analyzed, debated, and mourned countless times. Yet the systematic inertia, political gridlock, and cultural normalization surrounding these crises means that only incremental, insufficient change is achieved, if any at all. However, amongst the bleak critique of American society, the movie offers a profoundly hopeful and optimistic conclusion. The seemingly insurmountable supernatural antagonist Gladys is ultimately defeated through the collective, albeit decentralized, efforts of various characters. The victory's significance is magnified by the fact that Alex Lilly, a young child, directly and dramatically orchestrates her downfall. This is a powerful symbol, suggesting that the promise of a better future rests with the younger generation, rather than with the older one. Alex, embodying a kind of resourceful innocence, utilizes his intelligence, cunning, and remarkable patience to study Gladys closely, meticulously learning the patterns and weakness of her magic. Crucially, he does not attempt to fight her with a pre-existing power, but instead turns her own malevolent spells and influence against herself. His instrument of vengeance is not a traditional weapon, but the other children whom he sets upon Gladys. The film's most memorable moment was the children's absurd rampage across the tranquil suburbs. This chaotic event, however, offered a much deeper meaning. It was a profound symbol of youthful rebellion, illustrating their fight to regain agency and control from the corrupting forces personified by Gladys. The climax is a brutal and visceral scene where the children, driven by a primal, manipulated fury, hunt her down without mercy, ripping her limb from limb. While the violence of the climax is jarring, its philosophical underpinning is one of profound empowerment. This seemingly indomitable supernatural threat is destroyed not by the intervention of a powerful government agency or some grand organized force, but through the collective reactive actions of individuals and the next generation. A caring but initially powerless teacher, a grieving father consumed by his loss and love for his son, and a scared, terrorized, yet ultimately resourceful boy. These were the people she saw as utterly disposable, pawns she cynically manipulated, and the unwitting weapons she intended to deploy for her own amusement. This is the ultimate irony and central twist. The very things she treated as objects and tools turn against her. A weapon is not inherently loyal. Its danger is not confined only to its intended targets. By using and discarding people without consequence, Gladys failed to understand that she was forging her own instruments of destruction. The one who wields a dangerous weapon, particularly one with a mind and a capacity for resentment, always runs the risk of becoming its final unintended victim. Thank you everyone for watching this video. An extra thank you for my returning viewers. If you are new, welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do all the YouTube-y things. It really does help the channel grow. So until next time, don't let long-lost relatives you haven't seen in decades come live at your house. You never know if they might just be a parasitic witch.